Hi, first grade. Welcome back to step 2 of this contrast and emphasis jellyfish project. This week we are going to work on the second part of it, which is creating a background for our jellyfish. So, because we're trying to create contrast and emphasis, um, last week we did really bright and colorful, fun jellyfish. And now we're going to create the opposite of bright and colorful, and we're going to do like really dark and dull, no color to our background. So what you could use is I'm taking crayons and I'm taking a black, a white, and a gray. I have a new piece of paper and I also have paint. And I would only be using the black of the paint, which is a little bit scary. But so I will explain this all, and then you can decide if you would like to use markers, color pencils, another art material other than what I'm using. Okay. But so we want to create an ocean life, like underwater plants and things that you see in oceans for our jellyfish to swim around in. So I'm starting by making some seaweed, and I'm doing a kind of long, growing, curly, wavy line that goes up. I add these little leaves kind of growing out either side, and I'm coloring them in black. I'm then going to draw more seaweed kind of growing off from different areas, because if you've ever seen seaweed or touched seaweed, it's kind of all this um, big clump together, kind of like a plant or long vines. Okay. And so you can see I had that one kind of grow out. Don't be afraid to have it kind of go off your paper. If you look over here, it went off my paper. I did another type of seaweed, which I'll go back and I'll show you a little bit more of how I did that. So I'm starting at the bottom and I'm doing a wavy line up, and then I'm going to keep going and bring it back down, but widen it a little bit. So it's like, it has like a shape to it. You'll also notice that when I'm drawing these seaweed or plants, I'm starting at the very bottom of my paper, because plants grow from the ground. They don't just float in the air. So you want to make sure that if you are adding seaweed or plants or coral, that you're starting at the very bottom of your paper and having them grow up. Okay. Another thing that I added was some gray ones, and then I'm adding some bubbles, which we've had some experience with making some bubbles with highlights this year. I did some gray bubbles, so it's a circle, and then you add that little highlight to leave white. I'm drawing some bubbles in actual white crayons, so when I paint over it, they'll show up, and you'll be able to see that when I do paint over it. Some that are big, medium, small, some that are being cut off of my paper, so it looks like they're kind of floating away. And then here comes the next part. Now, if you have watercolor black paint, you can use it. It can get very messy with how you paint it, because you could get a little bit too dark with it. You can use the black watercolor paint. You could use black crayon. You don't necessarily need to paint this black or color it all in black. As long as your background is using the colors black, white, or gray, you're good. So technically right now, I could leave my paper looking like this because there is no color added on this at all. Okay. But I did want it to look kind of like a dark ocean. So I am going to be using black paint. Okay. And I'm going to tell you some tricks to make it a little bit easier and not as messy and dark looking. So I'm making sure I have a clean paintbrush, getting some of the black paint. If you notice, I'm adding a little bit of water to my paintbrush. So I just dipped it in the black and then I dipped it in the water. So I'm trying to water down my black paint. And if you notice, it kind of came out a little bit gray looking, which is perfect. That's exactly what I want. See here how I just put new black paint. So let's watch. I'm putting new black paint. That is super dark. That is not the same color as what I just did. So if you see, I'm going to immediately dip my paintbrush in the water and blend out all of this to try to make it a lighter gray. Okay. This could be a really tricky thing for you guys to kind of figure out. but I'm just trying to do this light wash of gray. So you can see again, it's really dark, so I'm gonna try to spread it out as much as I can, probably go in with some water and spread out those darker areas. It's okay if you have big areas of dark black, but try your best to try to blend it out so it's kind of an even um, shade of your black, or if you're painting it black, okay? And as you can see, I'm gonna keep going with it. I always start with kind of like a black puddle, and then I water it down and really spread it out as much as I can. Also, you'll notice that I just painted right over my bubbles and they showed up. That's the fun thing about using the white crayon with paint. I'm also going to be choosing to paint right over my seaweed. And this could take a while because you're having to paint an entire piece of paper. But just remember to spread out your paint, kind of add water to it to make it not as dark. At the very end, you can see it's as even as possible for coloring. It's not too dark, it's not too light, and it looks good. All right, so that is it for this week. Again, remember your background is created with only dark colors or like no color at all, so like black, white, and gray. Okay. If you have any questions, feel free to email me and I can try to help you out as best as possible. But other than that, I will chat with you next week. All right, bye.